Michael Carrick wants Morgan Rogers at Manchester United, while Liverpool are suddenly dragged into Andy Robertson to Spurs talk. The noise is loud, but not all of it deserves belief. Welcome back to Just Soccer. This is a breaking transfer news episode, and the mood today is simple. Separate the serious signals from the summer theater. Some of these reports point to real planning. Others look more like pressure tactics, fan bait, or clubs trying to appear busy, while bigger problems still sit there in plain sight. So let us get into the stories that matter, what is actually being said, and what probably matters more than the headline. We start at Old Trafford, where the first real debate is not whether Manchester United need attackers. It is whether they are targeting the right kind of one. Carrick pushes Man United to sign Morgan Rogers this summer. Morgan Rogers is an interesting recommendation because this is not the usual shortcut link to the loudest available star. It sounds more like a profile discussion, and frankly, Manchester United need more of that and less transfer window cosplay. The real issue is whether the club want immediate rescue or actual squad construction. Those are not always the same thing, and supporters know it. ESPN reports that Manchester United manager Michael Carrick is recommending Morgan Rogers as a summer target. The important part here is the wording. This is a recommendation and a target signal, not a completed negotiation, not an accepted bid, and not evidence that Aston Villa are already losing the player. Rogers is currently at Aston Villa, and that present-day context matters. He is not being discussed as some free-floating name in the market. He belongs to a club with its own ambitions, and any attempt to move him would need to deal with that reality. Right now, all we can fairly say is that ESPN frames him as a player being pushed internally as a possible Manchester United target. Fans are already split, and that split makes sense. Some look at Rogers and see athleticism, directness, and upside. Others look at Manchester United's broader mess and ask whether this is really the position that should dominate the early summer discussion. That tension is fair. A good player can still be the wrong priority if the rest of the squad is creaking. Staying with Manchester United, this next story is really the umbrella over everything else. One target is one thing, a whole recruitment summer is another. A big summer awaits Manchester United as transfers take priority. This is the bigger Manchester United story, because one signing was never going to fix a squad that still feels unfinished in multiple departments. If the club treat this as a cosmetic window, they will simply repackage the same problems with newer faces. Supporters are not asking for one glamorous announcement. They are asking for evidence that someone inside the building can still recognize a weak structure when they see one. According to ESPN, Manchester United are expected to prioritize transfers in the summer, with recruitment framed as central to improving the season ahead of the offseason. That is broad, but broad does not mean meaningless. Sometimes the broad report tells you more than the individual rumor because it reveals the club's actual area of focus. The key point is that this is being presented as a major recruitment summer, not a window where one marquee name changes the atmosphere and everyone pretends the hard work is done. There are no confirmed signings in this report, and there is no need to invent them. The signal is simply that transfers are expected to be the priority. That matches fan sentiment almost perfectly. The wider expectation is not for one superstar entrance with dramatic unveiling music. It is for multiple pieces, better planning, and a squad that makes more sense from back to front. Manchester United have spent enough time treating symptoms. This summer sounds like it is supposed to be about the diagnosis. Elsewhere, one of the trickiest stories today comes from the language of transfer reporting itself. Because in this market, a few loaded words can create a stampede. Romano transfer roundup, terms in place, Robertson to Spurs language. This is exactly the kind of headline where people hear terms in place and mentally skip 3 steps ahead to shirt photos and welcome videos. That is how transfer theater works. Suggest momentum, let the internet finish the rest. If you support Liverpool or Tottenham Hotspur, the smart move is to stay disciplined here. Vocabulary is not completion. A Romano-related transfer roundup includes wording about terms in place regarding Andy Robertson moving to Tottenham Hotspur. But the provided material does not give enough verified detail to treat this as an officially completed move. That distinction matters a lot, especially with high-profile Premier League names. Robertson is currently at Liverpool. That is the present reality anchor, and we should keep it there. The report points to language that suggests movement around the situation, but it does not give us verified grounds to say the transfer is announced, that personal terms are fully sorted, or that a medical has happened. Naturally, Liverpool supporters are split. Some can imagine the logic of a transition at left back. Others immediately worry about defensive depth, and that concern is not paranoia. Squad planning rarely gets kinder when you remove experience and intensity from a defensive line. For Tottenham Hotspur, if anything serious is happening here, the question is not just the name. It is whether the age profile, style, and squad balance all line up. Big clubs get in trouble when they fall in love with headlines and forget the build. Meanwhile, another winger is being pulled into the giant club orbit. This time the report comes with a big badge and a caution label attached. Bayern interest in Newcastle's Anthony Gordon, Sunday gossip. Anthony Gordon being linked with Bayern Munich makes intuitive sense because top clubs hunt Premier League speed, aggression, and output. But intuitive sense is not the same thing as an active deal. The useful question is what this story does in public. It flatters the player, pressures Newcastle United, and gives everyone something expensive to argue about before anything concrete has even happened. BBC Sunday Gossip links Bayern Munich with an interest in Anthony Gordon. That is the correct framing. Linked with interest, not bid submitted, not agreement reached, and not personal terms settled. Gossip columns can still matter, but only if you read them with the right level of skepticism. Gordon is currently at Newcastle United, and from Newcastle's side, this kind of story lands in a very predictable way. Supporters immediately ask whether this would represent a Champions League level step, whether Bayern could offer a bigger platform, and whether Newcastle can realistically keep every major talent if Europe and financial pressures collide. What we do not have here is confirmation of an offer or advanced negotiations. So for now, treat this as a live rumor with logic behind it, not a transfer in motion. Bayern Munich's name in a story always changes the emotional temperature. That does not mean the paperwork has suddenly appeared on a desk. At the same time, Real Madrid are doing what Real Madrid often do in rumor season. They scan elite talent, keep options alive, and make half of Europe nervous. Real Madrid continue to eye a move for Michael Olise. Michael Olise is the sort of player clubs monitor even when they are not ready to strike immediately. The danger is that every monitoring story gets inflated into destiny, as if scouting automatically becomes a transfer. For Real Madrid, the bigger issue is always squad hierarchy. A great talent can still become a complicated fit if the role, minutes, and development path are not crystal clear. The report, framed through ESPN in the provided context, says Real Madrid continue to monitor or eye a potential move for Michael Olise. The phrasing is important again. This is ongoing interest or scouting attention, not an agreed transfer and not an imminent announcement. Olise is currently listed here as a Bayern Munich player, and that is the context we stay with. Real Madrid fans are naturally weighing his ceiling against other priorities in the squad, because Madrid transfer debates are rarely just about talent. They are about timing, role, and whether the next addition solves the most urgent problem rather than just adding another luxury layer. There is no fee confirmed in the provided material, and no reason to invent one. The honest reading is that Real Madrid remain attentive. In modern transfer language, that can mean anything from serious background work to simple elite club surveillance. Sometimes the biggest clubs watch because they can. The hard part is knowing when watchfulness becomes intent. Now to a story with a built-in dose of chaos, because whenever Chelsea and Arsenal appear in the same transfer sentence, people stop reading carefully and start imagining civil war. Chelsea interest in an Arsenal player emerges in Romano-related update. This is where discipline matters, because the unnamed player angle turns a rumor into a blank screen for everyone to project onto. It is irresistible content, but also the easiest place for nonsense to spread. Cross-London stories get amplified because rivalry does half the work for the headline. The absence of specifics should make us more cautious, not more dramatic. A Romano-related item says Chelsea have interest in an Arsenal player who is described in the provided entry as up for sale. But the snippet does not specify the player's name, and that limits what we can responsibly say. The club involved on the player side is Arsenal. Beyond that, the reporting here remains general in this package. That matters because unnamed transfer stories can become rumor factories in seconds. One social post becomes 5 guest identities, then suddenly people are arguing over tactical fit, wages, and betrayal for a player who may not even be the one in question. Football internet is very efficient at building a mansion on top of a pebble. So the clean version is this. Chelsea interest is reported in a Romano-related update. The player is framed as currently being at Arsenal, and there is no basis here to say Arsenal have accepted any offer. Until the player is clearly identified in the reporting, this remains a tension-building rumor rather than a solid transfer development. That is not the only major move today involving Manchester United. In fact, one update points in the opposite direction entirely. Man United accept defeat and won't agree a deal for a mega money signing. Romano. Sometimes the smartest transfer decision is the one a club does not force through. Walking away from a mega money chase can look like failure in the moment and prudence 6 months later. The interesting part is not just that Manchester United may miss out, it is whether this signals a healthier tolerance for saying no when the price and structure stop making sense. Football 365, relaying Fabrizio Romano, says Manchester United have accepted defeat and will not agree to a mega money deal. The report is framed as a status update on a pursuit, not a confirmed agreement for some alternative target, and not a green light to declare the whole strategy solved. Crucially, the provided package does not ask us to identify the player involved, so we do not invent that detail. What matters is the recruitment message. A chase appears to have hit its limit, and Manchester United are reportedly not willing to cross whatever financial line would be required to get it done. Fans often hear accept defeat and treat it like embarrassment. Maybe it is, but it can also be a sign that someone has finally recognized the danger of paying desperation tax. Manchester United have done enough expensive improvisation over the years. If this story ends with them redirecting resources more intelligently, that may be less exciting than a headline signing, but a lot more useful.
Bayern Munich smash Bundesliga scoring record.
The situation is becoming more complex at Manchester United because recruitment talk never exists in a vacuum. It always sits next to the players who are already carrying the club. Bruno Fernandes, Player of the Year, the case for Man United's talisman. This is not a transfer story on its own, but it matters because Bruno Fernandes sets the standard any new signing will be measured against. If a club keeps buying without building around its actual talisman, it is decorating the wrong room. The phrase "tale of two Brunos" is useful because it hints at a deeper truth. Manchester United's inconsistency often turns even their best player into a referendum instead of a foundation. ESPN makes the case for Bruno Fernandes as a Player of the Year candidate, describing the 2025-26 season as a tale of two Brunos, and saying it has produced the best football yet from Manchester United's star midfielder and captain. That is not direct transfer news, but in a transfer priority episode, it absolutely matters. Why? Because every recruitment decision at Manchester United should be judged against one simple test. Does it help the captain's best football influence more matches, or does it leave him trying to rescue chaos with harder and harder passes? Supporters can debate style all day, but output under structural stress still counts for something. There's also a lesson here for the summer. If Manchester United are serious about the market, they cannot just add names and call it ambition. They need to build a team that reduces emergency labor for the players already producing. Otherwise, next season will be another conversation about why the talisman looked exhausted by February. And before we close, one more story matters because transfer windows are often born from bad afternoons. Nothing accelerates shopping lists like a flat attack in a game you were supposed to control. Arsenal ratings: Havertz, Martinelli, 4-10 in shock loss. Poor ratings after a shock loss do not automatically mean sell everyone and start over, but they do sharpen existing doubts, especially when attacking players disappear on the same day the title hopes wobble. Clubs love to say one result changes nothing. That is usually only true in public. Internally, matches like this absolutely reshape urgency. ESPN's ratings piece says Arsenal's Premier League hopes suffered a setback on a day when the attackers struggled for form, with Kai Havertz and Gabriel Martinelli both landing 4 out of 10 in the shock loss. Again, this is not a transfer confirmation, but it is directly relevant to how transfer priorities get emotionally and politically defined. When your attack misfires in a major moment, every existing concern suddenly gets louder. Fans stop talking in abstract terms about squad depth and start pointing at the exact zones where creativity, sharpness, or ruthlessness went missing. That is when executives feel the pressure to act, or at least to look like they are acting. The caution, of course, is overreaction. One brutal day can expose a real weakness, or it can produce a week of wild transfer fantasies that ignore the bigger picture. Arsenal have enough quality that one poor attacking display should not become a panicked rewrite of the whole squad. But if the same pattern keeps appearing in the biggest moments, then the market conversation writes itself. That is the latest from Just Soccer. The headline lesson today is simple. Interest is not a bid, monitoring is not a deal, and dramatic language is often doing as much work as the facts. Manchester United looks set for a defining summer. Liverpool and Tottenham Hotspur are tied to a story that still needs caution. Bayern Munich and Real Madrid continue to cast long shadows, and even the non-transfer performances are shaping what clubs think they need next. The smart clubs will use this window to solve real football problems. The rest will sell excitement first and explanations later.